Morning.
Morning.
The reading this morning is from James chapter 1, verses 2 through 6.5. In your Bibles, that'll be on page 854 if you'd like to follow along, or in the large print edition on page 1880. James says, "Consider it pure joy, my brothers, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith develops perseverance. Perseverance must finish its work so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything. If any of you lacks wisdom, he should ask God, who gives generously to all without finding fault, and it will be given to him. But he who asks, he must believe and not doubt." May God add blessing to the reading of his word.
Good morning. In the reading today, you heard James talk about considering yourself fortunate in the Good News version, or consider it pure joy in the NIV when you face trials. He said that by facing trials, your true faith will be tested. And he said that trials develop perseverance, which will help you mature as a Christian. He also lets us know if we need help that God is the one to go to seek counsel and wisdom. James does not say who gives us these trials. Today, I want to talk to you about my family and the trials we have faced over the last several years. And then I want to come back to James. Our son Nathan was diagnosed with stage 4 neuroblastoma on August 8, 2006, as a form of aggressive pediatric cancer. Over the next 8 years, he has undergone over 24 rounds of chemotherapy, radiation treatment, 2 bone marrow transplants, antibody therapy, several experimental trials, and is currently on an experimental drug called ABT-751. He has been through scans, tests, and surgeries, has been treated at 5 different hospitals, some of them local, some of them not. This, and all that goes with it, has been our constant trial since 2006. During this same time, I have gone from a new baby Christian to someone who has completely given her heart to Christ and can now stand up front of you guys and let you know about it. I have been asked constantly through this time, how did you keep your faith through such adversity? The easiest explanation is that I never blamed God for Nathan's cancer. I have never associated only good things happening to those who accept Christ and believe in God. Nathan's cancer was part of Nathan. It probably happened when he was being formed. I never felt that God zapped him one day with cancer to test his faith in mine. In my mind, belief in Jesus Christ and Nathan having cancer had absolutely nothing to do with each other. When Nathan was diagnosed, I was fairly new to being a true believer of Christ. It had taken me several years of evaluation to come to my decision. It wasn't like a lightning bolt hit me one day and suddenly I was a believer. I had been patiently taught by Scott, by the moms group here, and by other believers what it meant to be a Christian. Things going great for me and my family was never in the contract of being a follower of Christ. My decision to believe in Jesus was an educated decision that was truly life-changing. Our relationship with Jesus reminds me of a marriage. Before you get married, you find a person you connect with and care for. And you spend a lot of time with that person to make sure they're the right one for you and one that you can share your life with. As you say your IDs, you commit to this relationship for a lifetime. In mine, in Scott's case, it was 60 years because a lifetime was way too long for 20-year-olds. I hope the first problem that arises in your new marriage brings you and your spouse closer together and doesn't break you apart. Nathan's cancer was like that for me. I had recently become a believer. This disease came into our lives, and now I had enough information that I could turn to Jesus and God for help, not to blame them. They were there for me and my family continually through Nathan's disease, as well as the other trials that would come upon us. For me, this awareness started as just a feeling that we had a guardian angel, and then it manifested its way into what we call godliness. And now I can see him working daily in my life and can use this knowledge to help me and my family do God's work. I have hundreds of these stories of how God showed his love to us through pediatric cancer. I will only share a few of them today. I want to show you how my faith progressed and was strengthened through these trials. Most obvious is the fact that Nathan's cancer never worsened from the day we started treatment until today. He started his journey with a mass on his left adrenal gland that had metastasized to the majority of his skeleton. He was given a 5% chance of survival. He's now 12, and he has just a couple faint spots that like to show up on the scans and his shins. As we went through each phase of treatment, we did not know we would be here 8 years later with our 12-year-old boy. But with each scan, God showed his faithfulness by giving us stable to improved disease. So let's take a step back to the beginning of the story. Back in July of 2006, life here in the Ormsby household was pretty good. We were happily married, we had our 2 kids, and we were very secure in our faith, and we had this church here to come to. Scott had been offered several opportunities in the Air Force. We were thinking about moving, going to a different base. He was thinking of maybe deploying for a year, and he was about to apply for a command that would take us back to Edwards Air Force Base in California, where Nathan was born. And as part of these, Scott had gone off for a month-long TDY where we hardly ever got to talk. Nathan, our 3-year-old, had been complaining of leg pain. Mom, I jumped off the swing and hurt my shin. Mom, I jumped off the curb and banged it on the curb and it hurts. Nothing out of the ordinary for a normal 3-year-old boy. Kate had just had her first birthday. Smiling laugh full of curls. And Scott was out of town. Perfect opportunity for my 2 children to spike a high fever for several days and then be very irritable and out of sorts. I called the pediatrician on base. He had no appointments. And they were very uncomfortable leaving us alone to our own devices without them seeing the doctor giving some antibiotics and some advice. So we were sent off to the ER with the expectation of a couple nasty ear infections on each kid, antibiotics, and sent home. And that is exactly what happened with Kate. She had 2 nasty ear infections, they gave us antibiotics, and she was good to go. The problem was Nathan. He had no ear infections. His ears were perfectly clear. He had no sore throat, he had no runny nose. He didn't have anything at all to explain the high fever that he had. What he did have was leg pain and a fever. This simple visit to the ER for ear infections turned into our ongoing journey into the world of pediatric oncology. After our trip to the ER on base, Nathan and I ended up in the children's hospitals to figure out what was going on. Our first indication that there was something wrong came on a scan on his right hip. The face of the radiologist when that came out will forever be etched on my mind. The scan was positive for something. Personally, I find the word something rather vague. How could there be something wrong and then not actually know what that something was if they didn't? We did know something was wrong with him. Right here at the beginning, even before diagnosis, we started noticing things happen in such a way to let us know God was there present with us at all times. Nathan's scan was the day before. Scott had to make the decisions for all these career choices that would move us away and deploy him for a year, and he was able to say no. One more day and we would have been committed to move, and he would have been out of country for a year. Scott said no to these, and we stayed here in Dayton to get the treatment that Nathan needed. I know it's easy to pass off things like this as coincidence, but I remember feeling that day that we definitely had a guardian angel looking over us. The impact of the time was not lost on me even then. Even with the positive scan, it was a couple weeks before we had any idea of what we were facing. Thanks to another officer in the Air Force volunteering, Scott was able to come home from his month-long trip and was now here with us. Nathan had been in the hospital the entire time, and we were tired of being inside cooped up in July in Ohio. So Scott and I kidnapped our boy, stuck him in a wagon, and went into the courtyard in the inner part of the hospital. Put him on a swing. He wasn't able to walk at the time, so we put him on a swing and just listened to him laugh. And just for a moment, all was well in the world. And then we got caught. An announcement came over the loudspeaker that said, "Will the parents of Nathan Ormsby please return to their last treatment area?" We were busted. We had stolen our child and taken him outside of all things, and apparently we weren't supposed to. When we arrived back in his room, our heads were down, we were in trouble, and we were met by a Dr. Cristaldi. She introduced herself, and I'm like, huh. She says, "Yeah, I understand that's a strange name." I'm like, "No, that's not why I'm laughing. Nathan's PCM, his primary care manager, is named Dr. Cristaldi. We've never met him, and we know nothing about him or who he is. Her reply was, "I am that, Dr. Cristone. I am Nathan's PCO." Any of you who has ever dealt with the medical insurance knows how important it is to have your primary care manager on board, informed, and in agreement with everything. It can be a daunting task depending on your individual circumstances. And to tell you the truth, we hadn't even thought about talking to TRICARE at this point. But here in front of us was the senior resident on the oncology floor for the entire next month. And she was Nathan's primary doctor, asking us how she could help us. This was the first of so many things that we would come to call God moments. Even then, I saw this as significant and intentional. These God moments happened frequently. Some were very small and simple, and some were significant. As I look over the past 8 years, I feel that since I did not blame God for Nathan's cancer, I was able to see him work for everything and everyone around us then and now. We were truly being cradled in the hands of our Lord through the people around us. Here at Beaver Creek, we live in a very small community. In the beginning, our wonderful friends were really at a loss of what to do to help us. They learned very quickly that asking the question, how can we help? What can we do to help? Was only going to get blank stares from us. We had absolutely no idea how to answer either of these questions. Our friends lovingly learned to ask different questions. Can I bring you dinner? Can I watch your kids while you take a nap? We are very good at yes-no questions, not very good at open-ended questions. Some of our friends decided not to ask and just do. As I mentioned a couple weeks ago here in service, our neighbors knew that I was scheduled to do our yard work every Saturday morning. Scott and Kate would be with Nathan wherever he was, and I would get a couple hours out to make our yard not look horrific. For 2 years, every single week, without asking and without question, our neighbor John had our yard done on Thursday evening. This is mowing, edging, weeding, collecting leaves, cleaning out gutters, you name it. He did it in our yard every single week on Thursday for 2 years. Even at that time, we saw this as a blessing. Instead of yard work, I got to relax, sleep, breathe. It was easy to see God work for people in our lives when such love and attention is just given to you. Our children were also shown in the language of children, toys. For 6 months, every single day, for 6 months, we would arrive home and there would be at least one package on our step. Gifts from everyone we had ever met and many people we never knew. I think sometimes Nathan manipulated the situation to his benefit. One day we were in the hospital and he mentioned to me that he wanted a set of orange left-handed golf clubs. Not plastic ones, Mom, real golf clubs, and please have them orange. I found this to be funny and mentioned it on Nathan's Carriage Bridge site to show the rest of the world how silly and perfectly normal my boy was. A few days later, left-handed golf clubs and a container of orange spray paint arrived, was sitting on our front step with instructions. Spray clubs, give to Nathan. It is as absurd as it sounds. Thank you to my Uncle Mike. I had not directly talked to my uncle since Nathan was diagnosed, but I realized that our families were out there and they were quietly watching and loving on us and just looking for that opportunity, such as orange golf clubs, to do something, anything to make my kids' lives better, even for just a moment. And I saw God in this even then. So if we really want to make me cry, which I haven't yet, let's talk about you guys here at Aley. Your love for us was quiet and constant. This became most obvious to me one Sunday in the fall of 2007. I thought I was having a minor bout of allergies or bronchitis. I felt it was nothing and nothing really to worry about. I would wear my mask around the clinic in the hospital and then just ignore it. You will find this out about me. I like to ignore illnesses and avoid doctors at all costs. Even at the questioning of one of Nathan's doctors about whether or not I was sick, I completely pushed it off and ignored it. Until I went to my own doctor. And I was diagnosed with pneumonia in both lungs. Positive infiltrate is what they call it. Scott, can I have a copy? I was down and I missed several weeks in church in a row. When I was finally on the mend, I came to service. Problem was, I could not stand and sing. I could stand or sing, good to go. But I could not stand and sing. It was simply not possible. So in the middle of a song, I was standing up and I just sat down. No big display, nothing. I just sat down. The concern of this congregation was so great that you all stopped singing. No one said anything. until I was seated and comfortable, and then you guys went on. In that moment, I knew that you were all here for us. This was an amazing display of God, of love through you guys. Not just for Nathan, but for all of us. There were several times through this battle when things became desperate for us. We had seemed to come to the end of our battle. We felt we had put up our best fight, but we had lost. And in those times, God was the most obvious and showed up in a grand way. The most desperate of these times came at the end of BMT, or bone marrow transplant. Nathan was in a worst-case situation. The BMT was over and he was not cured. Nathan was without an immune system since we had reset it during bone marrow transplant and was still completely riddled with cancer. We were now out of proven treatment options for him. Scott and I went in search of something new and out of the box and decided to send him to New York City for an experimental antibody therapy there. This course may seem simple enough on the surface. The actual mechanics of carrying out such a plan were daunting at best. First, Nathan would have to have a second bone marrow transplant. Then he would need radiation done on the peripheral tumors to get his tumor load down. Then there were insurance issues, travel issues, what hospital to do this at, and then all those questions and issues that I did not even know enough about to ask. These would shortly hit me in the face. We made our decision one Friday and needed to get started somehow. Scott and I saw in our minds every day that we did nothing, Nathan's bad guys getting stronger and growing and hurting our boy. That Tuesday I was to meet with Nathan's BMT doctor for the last time. This meeting is when I expected all those tough things to hit us and make his whole treatment option impossible. The doctor started to explain to me all the things that would happen in order for treatment to proceed. I heard about inter-hospital protocols that had to be written. I heard about doctors and hospitals that needed to approve it, transportation issues, insurance issues, and so on and so on. Once again, I was with each statement, we became more and more resigned to the futility of all of it. Once again, I was beaten. I didn't even know where to start. I knew that this was the right course of treatment for Nathan, but I didn't know what to begin with. Then this doctor turned around to me and handed me a stack of paper. All of the paperwork had been filled out, completed, and signed by everybody that needed to sign it. All the plans, all the protocols, all the agreements, all of it was done. And all we had to do was say yes, and Nathan's treatment could begin. We were at our lowest point. We had nothing left to give. We had no more fight. We were completely defeated. All we knew how to do was pray. We didn't have a nice formal, God, could you please do this, could you please do that. We had a very simple, basic prayer, dear God, help us. What happened is God stepped in and made it easy for us to make a decision. The answer was obvious. All we had to do was say yes. I truly doubt that this doctor knows how she answered our prayers that day. But at that moment, she was doing God's work in our lives and help us beyond description. And that goes for each and every one of you guys here too. You have done so much in our life to be the hands and feet of Christ in our battle. We knew it then, and we cherished it. That treatment in New York led to another treatment, which led to another treatment, which led to a medicine he's currently on, which is called ABT 751. Nathan has responded great to this drug. It has very few side effects and has systematically removed the tumors that has remained in his body. He was supposed to be on this drug for 8 weeks, maybe 12, if we were lucky. But while on this drug, Nathan just kept getting better. The 12 weeks turned into several years. Nathan's disease just kept shrinking. It was a true miracle drug for Nathan. We planned on riding this treatment as long as we could. But after a few years in ABT 751, the summer of 2011, we received a letter from Abbott Labs, the people who made the drug. The drug had failed all of its trials. This drug was not helping anyone else. The letter told us that Abbott Labs was no longer going to make ABT 751, and we had a year to find another drug or treatment for Nathan because the drug was going away. Give us a year. We were not altogether surprised. We knew that it really wasn't doing anything for anyone else, but we were at a complete loss as to what to do about it. Should we stop all treatment altogether and take our chances? Should we find something else? We didn't know, and the doctors in Florida were of little help. Over the years of watching God work in our lives, we knew the most powerful tool we had was prayer. Our faith had grown that now we were able to pray to Him knowing He would give us an answer. So we prayed. And we got everyone we knew to pray with us. Our prayer was simple and specific. The options were endless. We were unable to deal with subtlety. We needed obvious. Dear God, please let us know what to do about Nathan's treatment, and please make it obvious. So that was in the summer of 2011. The letter arrived in January. Abbott Labs was spinning off a small company for their experimental drug. AbbVie had decided to keep making Nathan's drug. AbbVie was happy to continue to offer this drug to Nathan free of charge indefinitely. Prayers answered. After going through something like this with such help from everybody around us, we got an urge to start paying this forward to other families. We had learned so very much in our trials and battles that we wanted to somehow share this with families that were just starting out. We helped out in organizations here and there, but nothing really tangible. I found myself thinking about, off and on how, through the time, how, nothing specific, but had this feeling about how are we going to help others. I had kept in touch with Nathan's VMT doc over the years. Once we were going over a book by a mom of a teenager with breast cancer. He hated it. I saw absolutely no value to any other family in this book, just a mom venting about something that had happened to her. The question was, what was needed for our families? There's a lot of information out there on the web. A lot. Just drowned in it. What parents needed was some way to navigate through all of this stuff. They needed that 1% primer to get them started. They needed help from another family that had been through it and knew what was important or what really wasn't important. It was suggested that with my family's experience through treatment, this is such a positive outcome to Nathan, that I might be a good candidate to write this book. It met with some hesitancy. I decided that if I was going to write this book, I was going to write it all. I was going to write about everything. Not just the medical stuff, but this emotional stuff. Not just the physical, but the spiritual as well. I would put God into this book, and then I would give the book to Him and let Him help the families. After 16 months, the 200-page book was complete. We self-published the book on May 31st, 2013. I mention this date here because God has excellent timing. Now let's imagine you wrote a book on pediatric cancer, 200 pages long, and your wildest dreams. What can you do with this book? We printed 500 of them. We hoped that in a matter of a couple of years we could give those 500 books out to families. 500 families, that's an awful lot to help. We hoped that we could maybe get them into hospitals, so maybe families could have them right at diagnosis. And when we got really crazy and let ourselves dream big, maybe we could get them to Canada, United Kingdom, maybe Australia, but that's on the other side of the world. Then we prayed to God for help. Please help us get us this book to families that need it. I knew if we gave this book to God, He would use it as He felt was right in His timing. So, now what has God done with this book? It is beyond anything I could have ever imagined. He has found a way to get over 2,000 paperback books directly to families in hospitals in the last year and a half. There are books in-house at 61 different hospitals in the United States, Canada, Scotland, Ireland, England, Australia, New Zealand, and the Philippines. The website has been visited by over 2,600 different people in 81 different countries, with over 1,700 books downloaded, all of them free of charge to the families. Now, I'm a numbers person, and the stats are really fun to me, but let's make these numbers people for you guys. Last week, Tuesday, someone in Sri Lanka, got on our website and downloaded this book. A family off the coast of India is battling neuroblastoma and now has our story. In my vision of the book, as I listed, Sri Lanka was not on the list. Neither was Madagascar, Moldova, Malaysia, Poland, or any one of the other 81 countries. This is God. And now I see Him work. He takes our little efforts and turns them into this. I've learned through that His vision is a lot bigger and broader than mine. In fact, right now, the book is in its final stages of being translated into Lithuanian and Spanish. The Spanish being translated by our missionary be nice to think after all this, with Nathan and how our faith has grown and been proved strong, that our lives would now proceed easily without great conflict or issue. I have to admit, when we were in Florida living the good life, that I sometimes had a feeling that things were just a little too good. When was that next shoe going to drop? Maybe it's just from living in fear for so many years. But when this feeling would show up, I would pack the family up and we would head to the beach, because the beach does fix everything. This easy living was not to be the case. Before we moved to Florida, I had noticed that I had had random blood pressure spikes. I felt like somebody had come in behind me and scared me. I would have this adrenaline rush, and then a couple minutes later it would be fine. And I would just be going about my merry business. It scared me enough that I actually went to see the doctor. And as I mentioned earlier, that's pretty scary. And I got the let's wait and see diagnosis. Let's see what happens. After we got to Florida, the blood pressure spikes became more frequent and harder to ignore. One day, while texting with Nathan's doctor about the book, I just happenstance said, "What could raise a blood pressure like this?" And her answer was, "Please go see the doctor tomorrow." That was enough to get me to my doctor and let him know that we were going to do everything until we figured out what was causing this. After 4 months of doctors and tests, on May 31st, 2013, I was diagnosed with a pheochromocytoma on my left adrenal gland. This is the same place Nathan's neuroblastoma primary tumor had been located in him. My tumor was highly active, and we really needed to pursue immediate surgery to prevent a cardiac event. To complicate the situation, we were scheduled to move from Florida back to Ohio a couple weeks later. The doctors were very concerned that the stress of the move would make the situation even worse. Any stress would set this tumor off, and my blood pressure would spike 50 points in a matter of seconds. We spent a lot of time on these last couple weeks in Florida. As soon as we got to Ohio, we would need to start over. We would not need to find new doctors, we would have to get everything done, and we would need to try to resolve this situation immediately. The tumor that I had was so rare that finding an expert to remove it would not be an easy task. We were told that if we could find someone who had taken out 2 of these, we were doing good. As I was going through this, I had great difficulty seeing God. I knew He was there. I was just too sick. I was very sick and fuzzy and very out of sorts and not myself at all. But I also knew that He was there, and then after we would look back and see what He had done. With this faith, I knew my job was just to survive. That's all. Just live through this and not to worry. We made it to Ohio, we got our referrals we needed, we got everything done, we found the perfect surgeon, and my tumor was removed August 5th, 2013. Now in hindsight, let's see how God worked in this. First, let's discuss that date I brought up. I was diagnosed on May 31st, 2013. The morning of May 31st, 2013, we published the book. Same day. We had printed 500 copies. We had sent 100 of them directly to the neuroblastoma conference in Chicago, so it could happen whether I was there or not. Website was launched, the Kindle version was on Amazon. I quite literally had nothing to do with the book. That evening, I got a call from my doctor saying that I had a positive CT scan, and it showed a pheochromocytoma on my adrenal glands. God showed up in the timing by allowing the tumor to be found so it could be treated here in Ohio, not Florida. The doctors in Florida had no idea where to start. God showed up with a surgeon. The surgeon we had here was on base at Wright Pat and had removed 7 of them. I was his 8th. The endocrinologist I had was the one I had had for several years before I moved. God showed up in my old friends who came over and helped me move since I could. God showed up in this church, again, by welcoming us back with open arms as if we had never helped, by back in and helping us every day with meals, babysitting, and anything else we could choose. And then God showed up in some unimaginable ways. After my tumor was removed, half of it was sent to Cincinnati Children's Hospital for research. It is believed that my tumor and Nathan's tumor could be related. Through our treatment, doctors may be able to learn something to help understand Nathan's cancer and treatment. So that brings us to today. Nathan is a healthy 12-year-old boy somewhere hiding in here. Kate is, he's hiding. Kate is a talented little girl with a heart for music and pestering her healthy 12-year-old brother. Scott and I are healthy and enjoying our lives and being involved in this church. Our lives have been transformed through these experiences and known to be the same. Now let's go back to James. James said we should consider ourselves fortunate or full of joy for facing trials. Personally, I find myself full of joys that we have weathered these trials and still have our faith. I do find myself fortunate that I now have a stronger relationship with God, and I am happy that He can use our trials to help others with similar experiences. Perseverance has definitely matured us in our faith as well as people in general. Little things really no longer bother us. Speaking about our faith is easier and I do it more readily. But I have to say that the part of James that resounds strongest with me is James 1:6. But when you ask, you must believe and not doubt. This is the greatest change in me. When I pray, I have complete faith that that prayer will be answered. No doubt. In fact, I find myself anticipating His response and finding myself patiently waiting to see His answer. Let's bow our head in prayer. Dear God, we understand that being a follower of Christ does not mean we are going to have a life without any form of adversity. What it does mean is that if we accept You into our hearts, we can see You working throughout all the details. We can see the pieces fit together in such a way that we could never have even imagined. Amen.
As we come to time for our last song, you can stay with us. I think the song fits so well with what she was talking about. It's interesting because you guys have been through so much, but I think this first verse, it says, in this time of desperation, when all we know is doubt and fear, there's only one foundation that we believe. I think that's kind of what she was talking about, was that the only thing that got them through was knowing that their foundation was in Christ, and looking back on it, that they were able to survive. And there wasn't any coincidence, but it was God that was their foundation that helped them through it. So would you stand and sing with us?
stories. I always have another story. I told you there are hundreds after 2 or 3. One of these stories explains how far my faith has truly come in the past few years and understanding how God works in my life. When I was in Florida, a friend of mine was asked to be the lay director of Emmaus Walk here in Ohio. And I had promised this person when we lived here in Ohio and they were planning on moving to Florida, that when she was chosen, I would be on her team and do absolutely anything she needed to help her succeed. Now the problem was that I was in Florida and she was in Ohio. In order for me to come up to Ohio and be on that team, 30 or so things had to happen, and each and every one of them were more likely to go against me than to go in my favor. They all explained to me in great detail not to get my hopes up, and that just simply was not going to happen. I understood how they were trying to be nice to me. My response to them was, this sure is going to be fun to watch God do His stuff. I was able to be with my friend on her team for Women's Walk number 88 here in Ohio. May God show His glory to you in all that you do. Remember that He may not give you the trials